So let's talk about like the current state of the industry and really like
All
get
right.
into that.
Yeah. So Robert Gardner with the Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast. This will be part two with Shawn Kitzman, and we were talking earlier about oh improvisation, like kind of teaching a sequence, getting them to break the sequence. I get excited when they break the sequence, which includes what you just got to, which is the massage industry itself. What do you see happening?
Jeez, dude, it is a shitstorm.
Yeah.
Um, it's a pretty depressing landscape right now. I mean, obviously, I have access to the massage entrepreneurs group because you've made me or a moderator, and we get to kind of see it from the inside out, and
Yeah.
it's a pretty bleak place right now. And and I think that I see a lot of people hoping and praying that a government. And by the way, I'm not a tinfoil hat guy, right? Like I'm not running around worried about EMF and all the rest of that shit, right? Like I'm just a pragmatist. And the reason why I'm so pragmatic is because I built my practice in Michigan in the late 2000s. And also being from Michigan, I've watched an industry crumble and I know what that looks like. I've seen like exponential wealth leave. So, all of my life in Michigan, when I was a kid, you didn't go to Detroit. Like you just didn't go, right? My parents didn't take us to Detroit. I can count on one hand how many times I was in Detroit from the age of inception to my early 20s, right? Because and then Flint is the same way, right? So you have Detroit in the early part of the 1900s, that was this economic boom. And then Flint is a microcosm of Detroit. And actually, Flint at one point in time had the highest median income in the country in the 20s. Far more than New York, far more than LA, far more than everybody else. And then when you watch an industry get sucked out of that community, and then you watch the what happens to everything around it. I can take you to where the Packard plant was in downtown Detroit or in Detroit. And if you can like put on your imaginary glasses and look at the landscape of what that was and what it is now, that's exactly what I see right now in the industry. And it's actually what I see globally, by the way, right? And so, I think the thing that really concerns me is that a lot of people, like I just looked, and I won't say the person's name because I don't want to incriminate them, but I just looked before we got back on again. I saw someone talk about the $2,000 stimulus check. Now, I will tell you that during this election cycle, I was a big Yang guy, right? I like Andrew Yang a lot. I think he is someone that is very, very, very very, very revolutionary in the way that he thinks and he kind of puts stuff together. And I like the idea of UBI, or what he calls the freedom dividend.
Yeah.
But like Andrew Yang, I have this much confidence in a government.
Yep.
I don't give a shit if you're Republican or Democrat. I don't want to care. I don't want to talk about that. Like, I just want to talk about like the facts of like the idea that they're going to make a means tested stimulus check, right? Based on what we made 2 years ago, is bananas, or a year ago is bananas. And then they yank it out from underneath us. I can't actually get unemployment here in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of people wanting to rely on a government that is evidently doesn't give two shits about small business people.
Yeah.
And it's, and my wife and I have talked about this a lot, because like 2 weeks ago, my wife and I were talking about the unemployment, and she's like, well, what about this? What do you think about this? And I was like, well, first of all, I'm not trained. My brain doesn't think about that.
Yeah.
Because, there was nobody to catch me when I fell in the mid to late 2000s. And so, like from 2000 to 2010, like if I could scrape 1 penny together to make 2 pennies, I was really happy. And, 10 years I lived in just struggle. And so but that also has given me a nose for things that are a little bit more dire. And I think the place that we're at right now is, I was just listening to Dr. Osterholm, who was on Rogan. That was the infectious disease guy from Minnesota. I was listening to him today, and he was talking about like 20 months, which is by far, and also he recognized this thing like end of December, early January, as, okay, this thing's going to come and it's going to be here. And the idea of 20 months and the fact that a lot of the industry is really kind of choosing to follow something that is unfounded and untrue. I mean, if we just look at the rest of the world as an example, and we're doing far less things than the rest of the world is. So why do we think that in 2 weeks, somebody's going to sprinkle them Corona fairy dust, and then all of a sudden everything's good? And I think it's so funny because people who don't know me, and you and I have talked a bit, and you know I'm a ridiculously optimistic person. I am straight freaking Eeyore with a sprinkle of rabbit in here if we're looking at Winnie the Pooh characters.
Yeah.
Generally, I am legit Tigger and a little bit of Winnie the Pooh, right?
Yeah.
Like legit. I also see opportunity in this. And I'm really concerned that the industry doesn't see opportunity in this, because the industry wants to cling to the standards that we've kind of tried to build up over the last 20 or 30 years, which are really just false pretenses. It's the idea that, licensure and regulation and all of this shit is going to help us out. And that we're going to become part of the healthcare community and blah, 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 blah. Right. Well, and we were talking earlier on in the first part about the AMT and the AMBP, like being very regressive in the way that they're kind of handling this. But the reason for it is because we don't have a voice, because we're a small percentage of the small business industry. And on average, nobody cares about someone that makes $40,000 a year, which is around the industry average. I mean, they want to hear from people who make, upper six figures a year, 7 figures a year. And we don't have people by and large in the industry that make anywhere close to that. So, I think it's very it's funny because I was talking with someone the other day. Politically, as I've gotten older, I've swung a little bit more. I mean, when I was younger, I was straight Republican.
Yeah.
And politically, as I've gotten older, I think a lot of my social policies have swung far more liberal. I have some, kind of economic policies that are a little bit more conservative. But when I look at business, I am straight libertarian, right? I do not want to rely on anybody or anything to tell me what the fuck to do, right? Yeah. And that's where I'm at, and that's where I think we're at, and that's why I've legit. I don't know how many days is March 25th ago. Yeah. I've had 1 day off. I've only taught. The only day that I've had off, and that time has been Easter Sunday, and I could have actually worked that day too. Yeah. So. And why am I working that much? I'm working that much because, yes, you and I are rebels and outcasts, but I think that one of the things that we can see about being rebels and outcasts in the industry is the industry itself has given us a place. The industry has given me a place to create a lifestyle and create a something that very few industries would have given me. It has allowed nonconformists like you and I to exist. And I'm concerned about that. I have every faith that you will make it because you are. Dude,
listen. I mean, I'm this far away from going over to HEB.
Sure.
Listen, I need work temporarily.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing is, I don't consider that, and I know some people don't understand this. They're like, but that's not entrepreneurial. I'm like, hell yeah, it is. It's me paying my bills. It's me paying my mortgage and not defaulting. Closing. It's like, listen. In a strain, I feel a little bit of bias because I saw something similar to this during Hurricane Katrina. I was in Baton Rouge, an hour upriver from New Orleans.
Yeah, dude.
And you felt like the rest of the country was almost, not everybody, but kind of laughing at these yokels in Louisiana. But the thing is, we had to watch it up close. And when people are like, oh, well, FEMA, I'm like, oh, boy. Listen, if you talk about federal government stepping in and helping people, I'm like, oh, you mean like it did the indigenous population?
Right.
Like, let's go find a reservation and find out how they're doing. Like,
Yeah, let's see how good that is.
I don't have a huge level of trust. And the thing is, I don't use the word libertarian because people make all sorts of assumptions about that. It's like, politically, I'm like you. Over the years, I've kind of vacillated in various ways. And I'm sometimes disparate on different issues.
For sure.
Yeah. So for me, it's not that I don't, think social security should exist. It's not that I don't think unemployment should exist or welfare shouldn't exist or whatever. The thing is, they're sending people $1,200. It's like, am I not going to use that? Well, sure, if I get access to it, but that's tax monies, basically. I mean, we the people are the ones who make up government.
For sure.
And the whole thing is, it's like, when it comes to massage, and this is one thing, because I'm completely opposed to massage regulation. That makes
I mean, you and me both.
No fans. It makes me.
Oh my God! I can't wait until you and I both get picketers outside our doors right now, dude.
But the whole thing is, I don't need, in our industry specifically, I don't need regulators to tell me how to go out and help people. I feel like they're putting me in this box that starts to impose limitations. So, for instance, I have lots of conversations with Chad Bolding about diet and nutrition. Chad, amongst another friend, got involved with like carnivore diet and then intermittent fasting. So right now, I've not eaten in 24 hours. I feel great, and I'm going, like, I talked to a guy who's having problems, and I'm going, man, how much, and I don't know, I'm actually asking questions about this. How much does diet lead to inflammation? Because inflammation and pain are horribly intertwined.
Yeah.
And the thing is I'm going, okay, man, listen, I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not telling you how to eat, but I had chronic pain too. I think you ought to look into this. It gets to a weird thing because you start to have that scope of practice conversation. And it's like, I didn't prescribe the guy eat a certain way. It's just you're providing information to people to be able to make lifestyle choices that benefit them. It's the same thing to massage entrepreneurs. It's like, listen, I don't think it's bad to get a job in Massage Envy, but then pursue your dream on the side. That's just as entrepreneurial. The bottom line is, are you happy?
Right.
And I was not happy because insurance billing, I worked at a chiropractor's office. I really came into my own, kicking people's ass in 30 minutes an hour sessions. I was a mechanic. Like the chiropractor, the other staff started referring the chronic pain people to me, just going, we don't know what Robert does, but he seems to help people in pain. And then all the other staff were really thankful because they got to do easy, kind of Swedish relaxation. The chiropractor had big guys turned into butter by me, so it made it easier for him to adjust them. But I never rested on that job. I always looked at it as a stepping stone to private practice, which maximized freedom, maximized autonomy, and maximized pain relief. The problem was, if you gave me a 30-minute box, I was like, man, I could do so much more if they would just let me do what I knew how to do. And that was where the practice came together. It was like, how do you maximize, really what's human potential? When I think of like Bruce Lee, is like, was Bruce Lee a martial artist or was he a philosopher?
Yeah. It's hard to separate those two.
Yeah.
And so, like but the thing is, like, dude, I like legit, I'm set to have my best month income ever. And the reason why is because I chose not to wait. Like you and I, one of the initial things that we chose one of the things that we connected on early on was Seth Godin, right? One of the things, there's two things that I love that Seth says. One of them is don't ask for permission. And the second one is be a heretic. Right. And I think that you and I both do that well.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we could agree to disagree that, short hair is better than long hair. Right. We could agree to disagree that, like whatever we agree to disagree about. But I think that those two things that they kind of unify us as personalities, it's what allows us to respect each other, regardless of what our professions were.
Yeah.
We could connect on those two things, and you could do underwater basket weaving, and I could do, moon birthday parties. It wouldn't matter. We would connect on those two things.
Yeah.
And so, the thing that I'm really concerned about is in the industry, and why I've worked legit, I don't know how many days, fucking March 25th was ago.
Yeah.
But why I've worked every day except for one is because I'm concerned. I'm concerned that there's massage therapists out there that don't even realize that online practice is a thing. And they need to really look at it as a thing. Like I talked to an acupuncturist earlier on today. He was in one of my classes. And, like he and I were able to sit down and talk about some things. And lo and behold, the things that I roll out in my course are not earth shattering. They're not groundbreaking. They're not rocket surgery or brain science.
To you.
Yeah, of course, to me. But like by the time that someone gets done with that free course that I do, they go, oh yeah, no shit, I do that already. And that's the goal of the free course, right? I mean, the goal of the free course is just show you it's possible. And kind of like, the other person that we could probably connect on right away would be, obviously Gary Vee. And so, what really gets me excited, I talked with my friend, Elise Lengel, who took over my practice in Michigan after we moved. And I taught one semester at a college, which is really a funny story. But I taught one semester at a college where I was a heretic for a whole semester, right? I didn't ask for permission. Staff was extremely jealous of whatever I did because the students loved me and they hated all of them. And Elise was...
I relate to that as well.
Yes. Yeah. So it was really funny because when I first interviewed for the job, I went to massage therapy school before there was community college stuff, right? Like in 97, there wasn't a community college on the face of the planet, at least in Michigan. And I don't even think around the country that went, oh, massage therapist, this is a viable career to get into. Ooh, we can make money off this and monetize this. So what was it? It was small schools, right? And so, by the time that I got around to teaching at the college, it's 2011. They hired me for an occupational injury and sports massage instructor. Other than repetitive use and motor control, I have no idea how those two things are lined up together. We could have a conversation about it, but how you put those two things together for brand new students doesn't make sense to me. But so when I interviewed for the job, the lady who taught she was the director of the course. She was like, well, you don't have a degree. And I was like, okay, so let me ask you this question. Who's the longest person on staff that has massage experience? She said, well, me. I said, how long have you been teaching for? She goes, 4 years. I said, how long have you been in practice for? She said, 7 years. I said, oh, so you're in practice for 3 years. She's like, well, no. And I'm like, yes, you've been on staff there for 4 years. And also you told me you had to practice out of your house. So it's a very different thing now. And she was like, well, and I said, so here's the deal. I traveled with a nationally competitive boys soccer team for 3 seasons. Who on your staff has done that? Well, nobody. I said, oh, so what you're telling me is that associate's degree that your staff member has is worth more than what I'm telling you. And by the way, I outlast you by 4 years, and I've been in practice on my own for that time. She's like, well, so at the end of the course, she says, they weren't going to invite me back unless I had an associate's. And I was driving like an hour to make $30 an hour, right? Like I taught a 4-hour block. And so when I was done on a scale of 5, I had like a 4.275 student approval rating. And I know the two people that gave me crappy ratings because I actually failed them both. And I told them in the beginning, like, it's going to be really hard to fail my class. You're going to have to try. Like, you're just going to have to try to fail my class. And one of the people who failed my class, her dad was actually a professor at this college. So nobody else would fail her except for me. And I didn't give a shit because I didn't know her dad. It didn't matter to me anyway. Right? So after I get my student rating back, the lady calls me. She goes, you've had the best student approval rating of anybody. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. Because I actually taught him how to work.
Yeah.
So my student Elise took over my practice. We were talking about this today. And she, when this whole thing went down, Elise is a good friend of mine too. when this whole thing went down, I got on the phone with her right away and I said, hey, Elise, here's what I think you should do. And the thing that really excites me about watching Elise over the last 9 years, and then over the last probably 4 or 5 years, because she's really kind of taken off with some of the stuff in her practice, is that she has decided to really think outside of the box. And so Elise has now created, this opportunity for her, because now she's seeing online clients, she's created some online classes, and she's really kind of breaking the mold of what should happen. And she's not waiting for permission, right? She's not waiting for anybody to tell her that it's okay to do stuff. And I think that that's the thing that the industry struggles with, is that they wait for permission. They're not like you and I. But they also put a lot of roadblocks in the way, like we talked about earlier, like SOP, insurance and all the rest of that shit. But I think the thing that we have to think about is there's opportunity in any crisis. There's opportunity to be had, and there's money to be made in the crisis. And this is gonna radically change the industry. I mean, we're at a stepping stone. We're at a place in the industry that we've never been before. And in 40 years, when they look back at this is going to be a place where they go, oh shit, stuff changed here.
Yeah.
And I've talked to 350 to 370 massage therapists over that time frame since March 25th. And it's funny because I've seen other people say, well, there's so many people trying to take their practice online now. Look, earlier on, we were talking about, CEU integration and how low it actually is. Like 15% is like the high end. Well, I know how many people have taken their practice online and the people that I've talked to. And I'm right about 15 to 20%. So I might be on the high end, but if you do the math, and I'm not good at math, right? But if you do the math, that's like 40 people.
Yeah.
And the thing that people need to recognize is that clients and you said something earlier on, like the thing that people need to think about is like, if you decide that you're going to try this out, and by the way, it's not that difficult. You just have to decide that you're going to do it and give it some work and be uncomfortable with it. But if you try this out and you can make this work, if you can get 3 people to believe in this, your market goes literally from 20 miles around your office to the world.
Yep, here it comes.
Here it comes. And like,
yep.
So this is why your work is really important for this. This is why what you've done over the last, 18 years of your career is really important for this, because, you have people in your course and in your that know that this is possible. And so, it's only up to the imagination. And again, like, of all the things that I think that you and I can connect on, obviously, like, you're at one end of the spectrum and I'm on the other. While there's not really that much that separates us, there is enough that separates us to where if people didn't actually understand our personalities, they'd go, yeah, I don't know if Robert and Shawn would get along. I mean, look at that long flowing curly hair that Robert's got. Look at that fucking bald ass dome that Shawn has, right? Like, and then, people would get kind of caught up in like, well, it's really kind of funny because if we were to look at if people were just looking at the surface of our personalities, they didn't know us as individuals, they'd go, yeah, look at their personalities. I just don't know if they would get along. And then you kind of look at how, because you're a less assuming type A, right? Like I'm a very type A, right? You're a less assuming type A because you have a very intense personality, but it's in such a way that is a little bit more unassuming. Like I'm just up in your face and I don't know how to do anything different, right? You're up in people's faces, but the delivery method is different.
Go ahead.
Because you got a little bit of Southern drawl every once in a while, and you got the long hair, and you're a little chilled out, but it's the same thing. You possess the same, like, fuck this, I'm going to do it, like, mentality than I do. And also the thing that I love that you're talking about, because a lot of the experts in the industry, right, are not vulnerable either. And that's one of the other things that I really I really respect about you is that there's not a lot of vulnerability right now, because what's happening is everybody's like, they're ducking and covering right now. They're running to their bunkers and they're not being vulnerable about where everything's at. They're falling into the whole like, oh, it'll be okay. We're going to be all right. Right. And there's nobody like, It's honestly one of the things that I'm really most frustrated with the entrepreneur group. Like when I look around and I look at the leaders that are not leading right now, and I look at the rest of the industry that are not leading.
I mean, for me right now, it's kind of like, what is it? Speak softly, but carry a big stick, something like that.
Yeah.
Like I could go on and say stuff, but I'm in a different position because for the last 3 years, I've been skewering online education.
For sure.
Not all of my revenue stream is gone because people are still subscribing.
Yeah.
They're home alone. Like
Yeah.
I was, to make a long story short, I'm trying to push right now into online education even harder because everybody's at home.
Yeah.
So I don't want to rub that in people's faces, especially when people are, destitute and struggling.
Well, I mean, also to be fair though, like you're asking for $7 a month, right? Like,
dude, listen, if there is anything that I have fought people on, it is that. Listen, my staff, people who work with me, I mean, close proximity, just like you and I are having this conversation, they're like, Robert, you have to raise the fee on that subscription service. And I'm like, no. And they're like, but you're not making any money. And I'm like, the money I pay you with as an independent contractor comes from the goddamn subscription. Like, so you don't understand. I'm not trying to hit, I realize this, I'm not even trying to hit the US marketplace. Global.
Yeah.
Global. And I'm telling you, I've told people this. I'm like, when I gave away my free workbook years ago, it was my first venture into online stuff. And I had thousands of people download the workbook. And at that time, we collected data on like what countries they were in. I made a Google map and I put pins all over it for every country. And I was most frustrated because sub-Saharan Africa had the lowest download rates.
Sure.
And right now I'm looking at my phone and I'm like, I want someone in sub-Saharan Africa to video message me and tell me that they're helping people in their village because they're studying with me online. And it's like, your local school is not providing that education. I am from my garage. I understand it. I'm pushing. I'm doing all I can. And it's like, speak softly, carry a big stick. It's like, it doesn't have to make sense initially. So here's what I tell people. It's like, because initially you're crazy, but when you make a lot of money, you can become rich. Oh, he's eccentric.
Right. All of a sudden it becomes very acceptable, right?
Yeah. So for me, I did a little preview earlier of our vault and our subscription service. And in the business section, I'll take recordings or videos I've made. And I had one where I talked about the Grateful Dead. I never saw the Grateful Dead live, but I love the Grateful Dead's music for a few reasons. And the thing is, it's like, hippie. Because when I walk into a room, they're like, oh, it's like the Big Lebowski showed up.
Right.
It's like the tumbling tumbleweed, Just cool.
Yeah.
Just smoke the J, whatever, know. And it's like the Grateful Dead are the quintessential kind of hippies.
For sure.
Right? But it's like, the Grateful Dead were anarchists, man.
Right. For sure.
The Dead, did a lot of drugs, blew a lot of minds, traveled around the country. It's like, could you say they were lazy? Jerry Garcia was dead.
Right.
20 years.
Right.
And the remaining members of the Dead got together in Chicago with Trey from Fish, and they made $30 million in a weekend. It's like, because they cultivated their fans, they played without a net, they improvised, they built a fan base, and then what? Here's the thing. I love this because the reason I got so into the Grateful Dead was live recordings that some head somewhere during the era of blanks and postage would send me. The Grateful Dead, basically having recording contracts, whatever. When the technology got good enough, people started sneaking in recording equipment to record the live shows, which are all different. And I've heard stories about this where people went to Jerry and Jerry, people are recording the show. And he's probably on drugs and going,
sure.
I don't own the music after it goes out of the speakers. Who gives a shit, Because they just look at it that way. But what happened was they created a sort of pre-internet viral marketing where they allowed taping now. People came in with their recording equipment, but they were distributing all that stuff before the era of the internet, building rabid fans.
Well, yeah, I mean, so, obviously in our lifetime, probably a band that we can talk about that along with Fish, that was Dave Matthews, right? Dave Matthews was the same way. Mm-hmm. The Vault You know, that was the subscription in the 90s.
Yep.
You know, I mean, like, and there would be bootleg copies of Dave's, you know, and the other thing that I think that we both appreciate is long game, right? Because there's people that we know that play. I don't know if that I could even call it short game. It's shorter than short game. It's like micro game, right? Because it's all transaction.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Norbacek, because Norbacek so, you know, it's funny because I wanted to say this, and if there was one thing that I have to thank you personally for, because I don't know that we've ever talked about this. I was actually in the entrepreneur group before you actually asked me to come in, and I got out because I didn't like some of the shit that I saw. And then you asked me to come back in again. And not only did you ask me to come in, you asked me to come in multiple times.
Yeah.
And then I came back in, or I came in again, unbeknownst to you, right? Because I was in there and I was just kind of on the DL. I was just, because like, oh boy, it's not going to make me popular. I don't like massage therapists very much. Like, as a group, I don't like them. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of people that don't like me for this. So like, you know, we're going to watch like the 3 people that watch this part of it, right? And then it's going to go to like 0.25. Right? Your metrics are going to be pretty quick on this one. You're like, fuck, I'm not going to have him back on again, you know? So, but, you know, like, but the one thing that I have to say is that your ability to allow the group to kind of do its thing. And I have become very, very, very good friends with Norbacek. Very good friends. If I don't get a message from that fucker before 6 o'clock in the morning Central Standard Time, I message him and make sure that he's okay. We talk all day. The only 2 people that I talk to more is my wife and my son, because they live with me, right? And so I have to thank you for that, because I have made a very good friend in someone who I shouldn't be friends with, by the way, because he's an evil fucker, right? Like he represents the opposite end of the spectrum of anything that I even would have wanted to talk about. I remember when he first popped up in the entrepreneur group, and I started watching him like, oh, this bastard.
Yeah. Freaking
marketing, didn't own a practice, doesn't know what he's talking about. Groupon son of a bitch. You know, like, and then I watched one of his Groupon posts and I was like, oh man, dude, this guy is smart as shit. Mm-hmm. And so I have to thank you for actually like allowing the group to do what it does, because I've made a friend that is legit. Like, so here's how I classify friends. I have lots of acquaintances, but here's a friend to me. A friend is somebody that I would take my pen thermometer and stick it in your eyeball for. And Norbacek is one of those guys. Yeah. Right. And so it's a really interesting thing. And it's so funny because like he messaged me 2 Januaries ago. And when I did that kind of when Seth Godin's This Is Marketing book came out, and I was doing the daily, like, I'm just going to post on the daily this content because I want to show you what it can do. And he messaged me like, I don't know, I was on day like 29 or something like that. He goes, you know what? He goes, hey man, I just want to let you know that I really like what you do. And I was at odds with this guy, you know, like I was like, there's no way I'm going to like that dirty marketer guy. And then we have become, I mean, really good friends. Yeah. So, but we were talking about this earlier on today. Like, you know, there's definitely something to be said for people who can, in times of crisis, stick their head up. And I've made this analogy, right? Like, and I've talked about it on my sustainable coaching practices page. And I've talked about it every once in a while in my free classes. I see all these people, and by the way, when I say this, I don't count you as one of these people because you've provided a platform that I like the shit that you tolerate on the daily. I would never put up with.
Well, like, I try to figure it out. Like entrepreneurs is a weird thorn in my side. Like I try to like. To me, it's a lot like America. Like, sure. Anti-vaxxers and tinfoil hat people and, you know,
flat
all
this
stuff. And you go, this is the best we can do. Like,
Yeah.
how much control do I really, try to manifest there? And it's like,
See,
yeah.
but it's the beautiful part about the thing though, right? Because I don't know that we would have got past 12 people in the group if it was up to me. Right?
Well, there's many times I want to go and like change the banner to like massage entrepreneurs.
Right. But it's an interesting thing though. I mean, because as I launched my course, obviously I reached out to you and I was like, and this is the funny thing because a lot of people don't roll this way. I was actually just having a conversation with one of the pitchers that I work with. I'm going to be on a podcast tomorrow and a baseball podcast tomorrow. And the thing that people won't understand about me until you see me in this fashion is my martial arts background. I'm very much a guest when I'm in other people's places, right? And Norbachek and I go back and forth on this a little bit. But this is the way I think of stuff. So when I went down to Top Velocity in Covington, I went in and my client was down there and his family paid for me to go down there and work with him while he was there. They paid quite a bit of money for him to be there and paid quite a bit of money for me to be there. Right? And so I went in and I didn't know Brent from anybody. I'd seen him a lot online and I thought he was a really cool personality online. But cool personality online and cool personality in person are two different things. And so I went into the facility and I was a guest. I showed up, sat down for 4 hours and watched and shut up. And that's going to be a really weird thing for people to understand about me because they just see this extroverted talking head all the time. And that's the way I feel about the entrepreneur group because I'm a guest in your place. And so when I launched my coaching platform, I knew I didn't have to ask for permission, by the way, because you and I had talked enough. We have an amicable enough. We have enough respect between each other. But what did I do? I called you up and said, hey, I want to do this. And then how long? It took me like 2 weeks before I actually put a post on. Why? Because I'm a guest. And so the thing that I really respect is that you've created that group, and good God, is there all factions of the whole. I mean, it is a melting pot of the industry.
Yeah.
But if people really seek help, if they really want help, they can go to that group and get it. Because, oh my God, what questions do you have? All you have to do is there's this really fancy little thing called the search option. All you have to do is you can go back and find tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of coaching in that group. And that's a pretty cool thing. I mean, it's a pretty cool thing.
Free resources. The other thing is, and it's weird because even though I'm the admin, I started the group. And I feel like half the people there don't even know who I am.
Right.
And I post regularly. It just depends on whether they're interested in what I'm doing or not. And it's like, it doesn't really matter. It's
right.
Like, it's like flipping an FM dial and just finding under the song and figuring out whether you're a fan of some band. It's like, it doesn't really matter. I just keep putting out songs and just doing my thing.
Right.
The business itself and the group is like, it all depends on what you put into it.
For sure.
One thing I know about myself is I have a spiritual fervor behind massage and body work, whatever you want to call it. The way we help people with pain, mobility, those are my two main things.
Yeah.
I have a religious fervor about it. And then after the pandemic hit, for instance, a young lady called me and said, hey, my husband's a military vet. He's having problems. And I was like, what are you doing tomorrow? Now, she said something about telehealth or whatever. And it's only been since the pandemic, by the way, the last 3 weeks.
For sure.
That I've even heard the word telehealth.
For sure. Yeah.
Much less like it was a legitimate thing. And all I did was get online, show him how to use a foam roller, show him how to use a tennis ball, which he had. In 30 minutes, he reduced by 2 points on a pain scale.
Sure. Life-changing for that dude.
And it's like, there are sessions I give that are 3 hours long that the person only reduces by 2 points on a pain scale.
Right.
I know it's possible. I've known it was possible. The problem is I was having to drag the massage industry online.
For sure.
Drag them into social media. drag them into online education.
For sure.
You can't learn anything online. And I'm like, man, this is going to be trial by fire.
Yeah.
The whole time I'm like, Robert, I know they're doubters. Just go. Exhaust all resources, continue teaching, and find your people.
Well, we're gonna do a really interesting thing here, because I'll tell you how this works from outside of from the industry, in another very niche market. Okay, so the jiu-jitsu community is as weird, if not weirder, than the massage industry. But I will tell you, and I'm gonna show the people right now. Oh, hold on, let me go back. Sorry. Come on, this website is doing too good of a job with its upsells. So let me go in here. Now, where's my videos? Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you look into my feed here, you can only see like these 5 videos here. Those 5 videos there were $197 a piece. I've bought $1,000 worth of instructionals from a world-class jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah. Now, 15 years ago, that was like, only the best of the best had online instructionals. And now, I mean, granted, Danaher's the best of the best, but I will spend another $1,000 next year, right? Probably more, because his instructionals are so damn good. Like, I'm a fan of his now. And the thing that the massage industry needs to recognize is that, well, because here's the thing, like, people will tell you that jiu-jitsu cannot be taught online. Now, there is something to be said for that, because there's like, you can only drill so much on the dummy, right? The dummy doesn't give you live resistance. It doesn't give you aliveness, as we call it, right? And now, yes, there's something to be said for human touch, right? There's also something to be said for someone who can get online with you, be a willing participant in the things that are going on with you, demonstrate compassion and empathy for you in your thing, and help you provide solutions. Yep. There's value in that. And that's the thing that the industry has to wrap its brain around. Because again, like I said, we are at a cornerstone in history. It's right here. Yep. Now, is it for everybody? Nope, it's not for everybody. Just like relaxation massage, sure in the hell isn't for me, right? Just like I have zero interest in cupping, right? Now, are those two modalities, or are those two delivery methods do they not have value? Both of them have absolute value, but they're just not good for me. But how do I know that relaxation massage isn't good for me? Because I tried it on for 3 years and lied to myself and figured out that I wasn't good at it. Yeah. Right? I just know that for me, like, I'm not interested in like tools, right? So, because I do movement re-education. But that doesn't mean that the massage therapist that I hired previous to that, she does a lot of cupping. And I was really excited to have her on board, because I think it's a viable modality. Mm-hmm. So, like,
I've seen it before. There was a student in our subscription, this has been a year or two ago. As I talked to subscribers, she was having a problem with her hands because therapists are working on a table compressing. They're developing carpal tunnel issues. And at that time, I think it was over Facebook Live. I said, yeah, I'll just show you how to work on yourself. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, it's free. You don't have anything to lose. And then I worked with her, and I was showing her how to basically take her knee on a mat, put it in her forearm,
for sure,
flexors or whatever. Yeah. And you could see the videos in the vault. You could see the look on her face when she's like, oh my God.
That worked.
Like, how did this guy know this? And I'm like, I've done this 9 million times.
Sure.
Like to 90%, 10% was the online portion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, it's just like the veteran. When I work with him, and you can see him go, how the hell did this guy this kind of weird hippie guy showed me how to work on myself online. You know, for me, working at a chiropractor's office, I'll never
Yep.
forget just going to an anatomy chart and saying, listen, you got these muscles over here. They just a little bit tight along your spine. It's, you know, this muscle, that muscle. And they go, wow, I've never had a massage therapist educate me before.
Essential Anatomy 5. I
Yeah.
use it every day in my practice.
That to me was like the failure of the massage industry.
Yeah, for sure.
The bottom, it was the boundaries, the expectations were set so low
Right.
that I only had to perform to here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you can, yeah. So, you know, I mean, again, is it for everybody? No, it's not for everybody. Well, and by and large, it's not for everybody, is because if you stay within the purview of the industry, then you're not going to be able to break beyond that. And the two things that the two things that I talk about that I think that are most important for massage therapists, if they're going to get better at all, I don't care. If you're going to deal with injuries, here's the two things you got to get better at. You got to get better at interviewing. So you have to be able to drag information out of your client in a way that we're not taught in school. Because what are we taught in school? And it was funny because I was talking to this acupuncturist early on today. I had mentioned that in part one. And we were talking about like how school is just enough to make sure that you don't kill somebody, essentially.
Yep.
Right? Doesn't matter if it's chiropractic. It doesn't matter if it's PT. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter across the board. It's just enough to make you safe, right? But outside of that, those are skills that you have to put together on your own. And being able to interview a client is one of the most difficult things that massage therapists deal with. They're not able to do that because what are we taught in school? And most people are not like you and I. They're rule followers. I'm bad at following rules. I mean, if you track the history of my life, I don't follow rules. I mean, skateboarder, right? And by the way, pre X Games and pre Tony Hawk Pro Skater,
yeah.
Right? So before it became cool. Back when you know, on the regular, you ran from cops. Not because you broke into some place or stole something, because you were riding your damn skateboard down the sidewalk, right? So I'm a rule breaker as far as back as I can possibly think. So, but you know, the thing that we have to remember is that in massage land, if you're a traditional therapist, then what happens? What do they teach you in school? You have an allotted time. You need to get as much lotion spread on that client in that allotted time as you possibly can. And don't go a second over, but don't end your session a second before. And don't talk to your client because you're going to ruin their vibe, right? Don't try and get fancy on them, and talk over the top of them too. Like make sure that they know that you're smart. And those are the reasons why it's so difficult for people to break out of this, because God, man, what people don't realize is in times of crisis, people just need real people,
yep.
Right? They need people that are transparent and authentic and care and are willing to go through struggle, you know, like just like they are. And I think that, you know, right now, that's what the industry needs. And collectively as humanity, that's what we need. And we can provide that role and that value because, you know, like, so you do 3-hour sessions. I do 45-minute sessions. Regardless of the time, it's exponentially more than they spend with any other healthcare practitioner outside of personal trainers, right? Exponentially more. My wife is a midwife nurse practitioner. The OBs get pissed because she spends 20 minutes with a patient. You know, like 20 minutes with a patient talking about pregnancy.
Yeah.
20 minutes with a patient talking about female health. Like, and that's like, they're the man, you guys spend a lot of time with your patients, you know? And so like, I don't know, I'm not good at math, but I know that 45 is more than 20. And I know that 3 hours is a lot more than 20.
Yeah.
So what you choose to do with that time is completely up to you. Now you can follow what the industry does, and you can stay within your purview, or you can choose to educate your client. You can choose to create a relationship with your client, and like create a healthy relationship with your client. Create a relationship with your client that allows them to go take advantage and take ownership of their own body, right? And people go like, this is my other favorite one. It's like, and you've alluded to this somewhere before. It's the educators talk about it with students, but really it's the same thing. They go, well, if I show them how to help themselves, well, will they come back to me as clients? Well, of course they will. Why? Because you actually did something for them that nobody else does.
Yeah.
You know?
There's no shortage of pain. Massage therapists, pre-pandemic, you know, we deal with pain. Most massage therapists would agree. Even relaxation sessions help people with pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's an Oxycontin epidemic. People are in pain and there's no assistance. Like there's no, like, I'm just talking about soft tissue.
Right.
Like, dude, listen, I try to explain to people, I'm like, listen, I mash on people for a living.
Right.
I just find an area of tight tissue and go, hey, what's this? And bring your nervous system's awareness to it. That's about as simple as it gets.
Yep.
Now, it's very fancy mashing.
Right.
It's skilled, practiced mashing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like...
It's still mashing.
Yeah, it's like talking about food. And food is something... I didn't become a chef because I wanted to massage and body work. But, you know, food comes in, fast food, drive-through. But here's what I wanted to do, Iron Chef.
Right.
6-course, French meal, reductions, sauces. And here's what happens. People hang out longer and they communicate and forge connections over food. And the depth of that connection is deeper. And I was like, I want this in body work. Why doesn't this exist? And it was like, well, you have to create it.
For sure. Yeah. So, you know, my hope is that, and so here's something that I've said. I think I've said it in the Facebook on the entrepreneurs group and Alive, but I'll say it again for, you know, the 0.25 people that have stayed around for this long for me. So, you know, this is the things that people see in their practice right now, the difficulties that they have, they're not COVID problems. Those are problems that existed before COVID. Mm-hmm. COVID just exacerbated the problem.
Exposed. The thing is, New Orleans, like people, you know, New Orleans, oh, Katrina. And I was like, whoa. The levees failed.
Right.
The levees failed because the infrastructure had not done what it needed to do to protect the city. Now, granted, it was a natural disaster.
Yeah.
But it exposed the poverty. It exposed the stuff that had already been there. They acted like drugs just suddenly showed up in New Orleans. I'm like...
See, this is a really interesting thing. And I think that this is why you and I connect so well, because we're from the same environment. In that, so you lived in, and I've been, so it's so funny because I when I was in Louisiana, and I drove around Covington and even into like over where the airport is, I said to my client who's from Minnesota, and have you been to Minneapolis?
No, not Minneapolis.
Okay.
No.
All right. Okay. So Minneapolis is a really weird thing. So there's 16 Fortune 500 companies that are headquartered in Minneapolis. We have 7 $1 million zip codes in the Twin Cities. The money that, I mean, like $100 bills fall out of people's pockets. And for people like you and I, who come from areas that, again, dude, now I haven't been into New Orleans proper, but I've seen enough stuff. Like, go into New Orleans proper, go around New Orleans. There was an assload of money there at one point in time. There was opulence there, and then there wasn't. And Detroit is the same way, right? Michigan is the same way. Ohio, as much as it, you know, I mean, it's that state down south, so I won't talk about it very much. But Ohio, and so this is a funny thing, like people from, again, the 0.25 people that stay on, the 0.75, those 0.25 that's from Ohio, they'll understand what I'm talking about. But Ohio, if you go to like the eastern end of Ohio towards Pennsylvania, because what do you get over there? You get towards the steel industry and the mills, in the mines. Like you get into eastern Ohio, and there was money there, and it's gone. And so the thing that when you were starting to talk about, like you were just talking about like New Orleans and Louisiana and that around there, I drive around Covington, and I'm like, well, shit. Other than gators and humidity that I don't like, this feels like Michigan to me.
Yep.
Because what you have you been into Michigan at all?
Not Michigan specifically.
Okay. All right. No. Okay. So see, if you got into Wisconsin would feel a little bit more like Michigan than like Illinois does. But there's parts of Illinois that kind of feel like Michigan. But because of Chicago, and there's some economic stability in Chicago, you kind of lose it a little bit because there's something to kind of grab onto. What you have in Louisiana is a very similar thing that you have in Michigan, in that there was something there, an industry left, and then there's the fallout because of that. And then you have a bunch of people who decided to stay around that are resilient as hell and are proud and blue collar and gritty and abrasive and then also at the same time humble and welcoming and all of those things. It's a really weird thing, you know? And so when you were talking about Louisiana, and I think that's one of the other, so I think Seth and Gary are ways that we connect, but I think because we're from very similar roots, and you have to make it there. When I came to Minneapolis, I laughed, right? Because I was like, I could take anybody from Detroit and stick them in Minneapolis and they would make it. I don't know that I could take people from Minneapolis and stick them in Detroit. And
yeah.
And you could take people from Louisiana, because I've been to Austin enough times. You could take people from Louisiana and stick them in Austin and they would make it. Now, as gritty and as weird as Austin wants to pretend it is, you couldn't take people from Austin and stick them in Louisiana and make it.
Oh man, listen, New Orleans was, dude, it's hard. It's hard. Because the thing is, it's like you're explaining or trying to explain poverty.
Yeah.
And the poverty in America, it's like when I moved from Baton Rouge and you grow up there, you're used to cultural context.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Then I moved to Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania to York.
For sure.
And I was driving down the highway and I was like, it took a month. And I was like, oh my God, these are the whitest people I've ever been around in my entire life. I was like, there is no gumbo, no boudin, no jazz, no funk, no soul.
Right.
I was like, these people got the Amish and they're making butter.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that tenacity, that street level, like Master P, get rich or die trying, hustle, slinging rocks, build a record label, rap, you know, that thing had just been, I don't know, culturally just ingrained in me. Like, you know, that struggle to survive and thrive. Now, I transported it to Austin after Hurricane Katrina to sort of escape some of that poverty and go where the money already was, because I couldn't fight the overall culture.
For sure.
So being able to be in a position where you just go, can I make it? Can I make enough money to take care of my family? Can I continue helping people? And what's the easier way? So for instance, one of the things about therapists when it comes to like business, and I talk to them about target market, is they're like, well, it's for everybody. And I'm like, you got to sell it to people who can afford it. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I have, you know, a $240 3-hour session. Not everybody can afford that. And they're like, well, what if I can afford it? I'm like, I created an event called Time Massage Jam where I give it away for almost free every Thursday night for the last 8 years. It's the same thing.
Right.
It's just packaged in a slightly different way where I teach the public how to work on each other.
Yeah.
But that sort of tenacity is, I mean, it's the underbelly of New Orleans. Like I was talking to somebody else about it recently. It was getting kind of teary about it because I miss it so much.
For sure.
But the poverty and the frustration that cultural context gives New Orleans part of its charm.
Yeah.
It's like, we got to make do with what we got, and we made gumbo.
Yeah. No, dude. Like, you know, there's an authenticity and a vulnerability that comes from that. Like I went down south and I walked in, like, you know, I'm going into the subway in Covington, right? And other than the accent, that lady at the subway in Covington was the same lady in Michigan in the subway, right? Like, you're going to lose more people right now when I say this. Those people are not the same as the people in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the same thing. And there's not the same like desire and grit and hustle and like, you know, like despite the economy, I made it. Despite the economy, you made it. Right?
Yeah.
Now, you had a national disaster. We had an economic fallout. right? But and you had an economic disaster to a place that already had an economic disaster, right? Like you had a weather situation to a place that already was struggling, right? So, what do? You just pick back up and you dust yourself off and you get back on the horse again,
Yeah.
you know?
Culturally trying to explain New Orleans to people, having grown up in the area, like culture is a weird thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't live in Buenos Aires.
Right.
Yeah. It's cultural context. It's hard to explain unless you've been in it. But
Right.
trying to explain to people, I'm like, listen, New Orleans probably has more in common with Haiti than it does the rest of the United States.
For sure. Yeah.
It was hard. Like I had friends come down. This was one of my favorite stories. I had friends come down after I got out of massage school to New Orleans pre-Katrina. We went to Jazz Fest.
Yeah.
So we had a crash course in Louisiana culture. And I'll never forget being on a riverboat at a show. There's a brass band on the upper deck playing and dancing on the river, chemical plant, all the lights. And my friend just going, man, I had no idea. And I'm like, I told you. I was like, this shit is not America, bro. Like, this is a whole other cultural landscape. The tenacity, and I think the supporting the little guy.
Sure.
That's where massage entrepreneurs came from. That's where the hustle comes from. It's like the guy with a dream. It's why I have, a 2-hour consult with somebody who's in our subscribers group. They're only paying $7. It's like I'm trying to find the people, the underdogs who are fighting to get their piece of the American dream.
For sure.
There's so much, it is a frustrating situation, but there's so much potential if people will just break out of the normal bounds. Like I talk to so many people about video production because social media is a big deal for me. And it's interesting to me because again and again, it's like, I thought I was teaching bodywork, and then I thought I was teaching business. And then I figured out I was teaching self-esteem.
Yep.
Because they go, no, but people are going to judge me. And I'm like, those people are fucking losers. Why do you care what they think?
Yep.
Have you ever gone, I've never done this. Have you ever gone on to YouTube, found something you didn't like and go, I don't like this?
Nope.
It's like, it's a waste of my life.
Well, and the funny thing about it is like people are unafraid, like they're afraid. Like, so I had an asshole on Pitching Nerd, and I gave him 2 chances, right? He wanted to come in and dick swing on my post. So now you're a guest, right? Let's go back to that guest conversation. You're a guest. Treat it as a guest. I don't give a shit that we're on the internet. Because you know what I have the ability to do? To block you, dick. And also, by the way, so he comes in, he's, has this biomechanics degree, which is worth about as much as this sticky note, if we're going to be honest, right? So great. You spend an assload of money to go to school. Like it's the conversation that Will Hunting has in the bar in Good Will Hunting, right? I mean, that's what it is, right? Yeah. Oh, great. You're going to plagiarize the whole book for me. I read that book too, And so, he comes in, tries to pontificate about the foot. By the way, I've spent 96 class hours in a CEU that's largely based around this thing. 96 class hours on top of the independent study that I've done. Now, I'm not an expert, but I know a lot of shit about this thing that I didn't know 3 years ago, right? And I can talk to you a lot about it, especially in application. So he comes in and decides he's going to be an expert. I gave him 1 shot. He comes back in again, wants to talk condescending to me. You know what you get? You get booted, blocked. And then he comes on my on my personal Instagram. Did you delete your page? Delete that thing too, man. You want to be a dick? You get to get booted out of the club.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the thing that people don't get. Like, you have the choice. You have the ability to choose the people who are that are your fans.
Yeah.
Right. And now, if that guy came in and said, hey, look, I was thinking about X, Y, and Z. What do you think about this? I am willing to have civil discourse until the day's gone. I love it. I mean, that's the best thing about Norbachek and I, right? Like, we disagreed for probably the first 2 years that we knew each other, right? And by the way, I have called that guy names that nobody else would put up with, and he's called me names that nobody else would put up with, right? Like legit, like on the regular, I call that guy an asshole and a bastard, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I mean it in the most affectionate terms possible, right? So like, I am all for civil discourse. But the thing that people, I mean, they want to talk about going online or whatever it is, and they're concerned about what everybody else thinks, like, like, it doesn't matter, because that one person or those two people who have nothing better to do, by the way, the people when I post in, like in the Colorado massage therapy group, and they laugh at the idea of online. Well, look, pal, I'm sorry that you don't actually have imagination and you can't think about it. So when you're bitching about not getting your unemployment check and I'm making money, like, let's see who's laughing now, bro.
Yep.
The
distribution, I realized at some point when I was theoretically like looking at what I did and like, well, what is it? Is it tie? Is it not tie? Like, I was going through all of that, and then you realize, okay, one of the distinctions, Robert, your work primarily close on, mat based.
Right.
It looks totally different. And then I went, Robert, you can film and photo document everything.
Right.
And once I hit that, I went, oh my God. Like, I'd hold up my phone and go, listen, guys, the printing press led to the Protestant Reformation. It completely restructured society. What this is going to do is going to dwarf anything that the Protestant Reformation did.
Yep.
It's a small personal computer in your pocket that allows audio and video distribution for free to a global audience.
What would you have done? Now we're going to be old guys and get off my lawn here for a second. I tell my son this all the time. Do you know what I would have done with that thing at 14? Holy shit. Right? Like, put that in your hands at 14 or 15 or 16. Like, I mean, think about what you would have done with that. I mean, like, it's incredible. I was trying to figure out how to make money out in the country when I was a kid. Give me the access to this, right? Like, I mean, give me the access to eBay when I was a kid. Dude, I'd have flipped everything I possibly could, including my parents' house, right? Man, I got this rock. It comes from the country. You need this rock, city folk, right? Like, this is a country rock. It's not the same rock that you have in the city folk, right? And I'll sell it to you for 45 cents. And we'll do an eBay auction for it, and I'll take as low as 25 cents. But it was 25 cents more than I had. And so this thing here, and I mean, we all run into the same problems. Like, we all run into the same issues, right? Eventually we get in our own way, but I mean, it's bananas, dude. It's a game changer. And
it's not, they're always like, I think they're a little too concerned about making it perfect. And I'm like, no, man, listen, get up every day and just make it better.
Yeah. So let's talk about perfect. Let's talk about what,
if you practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you still practice?
For sure. Yeah.
Is your practice going to be different 6 months from now?
It should be.
A year from now?
Should be.
It's a practice. And
yeah.
It's an art.
Right.
It's an art form. Picasso, 30 years. Change. Oh yeah, he's known for his blue period.
Yeah.
The thing is, it changes.
Yeah.
Just document the process. Just take out your phone, show them what you're doing. And like, I literally do this. They're so worried about it. And I'm like, dude, listen, I'm like, oh, I got a weird mole, or, I got a zit today. Oh my God, it's like the worst day ever. I'm in the middle of COVID and I got a zit. I wouldn't want to die.
Right. Yeah.
It becomes fodder for your fans to come along with your journey and learn with you.
Yeah. Try doing it with this package, man. It's way more difficult doing with this fucking package, right? Like, I mean, bald head, crooked nose from getting it broke skateboarding when I was a kid, one tooth missing here from an elbow, crooked teeth. Like, yeah, man. Ears like this, kind of cauliflower over here. Yeah, it's great. This is a great package to work with. Abrasive personality, super type A intense. Everybody loves that,
But in the end, it also allows distribution to find your people.
For sure.
Let's look at it this way. Let's say you had hardcore students and you only had 2 per state. That's 100 hardcore students. If hardcore students were paying you $1,000 a piece and you have 100 of them, you just made
pretty decent.
Yeah, that's okay. 2 people. It's only 2 people a state. Yeah. And that's not to mention the fact that you have access to a global audience.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's blown me away with my free class. When I started to get in people internationally, like, the first guy I got in was from Denmark, and I was like, oh shit.
Yep.
This is kind of a thing. you know, and now I have students internationally. So that means I'm an expert now. I have international students, you know.
Exactly.
I mean,
He teaches in Denmark.
holy shit. Yeah. I mean, you know, I got people, I got internet. And it was so funny. You came in, I was like, I have international money now. Right. So, you know, I mean, but when you think about it, like we'll talk about perfect. Right. So I started this, by the way, this coaching thing wasn't this online platform was not something I was even intended to do 8 weeks ago. Right. I stumbled into this thing. And then after Ortiz posted on the group, you know, that he took my course and he really liked it, I had 300 people sign up within like 96 hours.
Yep.
Right. Like, and like, I went from my duct tape and toothpick system that I had imploded upon me. And then one morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, I did a heavy kettlebell, or I did a high volume kettlebell set. And oftentimes if I don't eat before I go to bed, and I did eat before I went to bed, but I woke up and I was hungry and I can't go back to sleep again until I eat again. So I woke up, I was hungry. I came out here, got a bowl of granola, and my brain was on overload because I had converted a bunch of people. And in that time, I sat down and I put together this mind map. You can't see it now because it's all fucking, you know, like it doesn't work. But anyways, I put together that mind map in like an hour, and I realized that I needed to hire an assistant because if I was going to go forward with this anymore, it was going to blow up on me. And of course it blew up on me, right? 4 days later, what I was afraid was going to happen did happen because I didn't have an infrastructure in place. And now we're rebuilding the infrastructure and putting it in place. Like, and I bet you, because you've done this for 3 years with
No, it's always broken, bro.
Yeah. I mean, you could go on and on and on and on and on about it. But as you go, you just adapt. And as you get bigger, now the average massage therapist, the barrier that they're going to have is whether they use Square or Stripe or PayPal, whether they use MindBody or Acuity or, you know, Booker or whatever the hell else they want to use, whether they use Zoom, FaceTime, Google Hangouts. Like, those are the problems that they'll have. Do they use MailChimp or some other newsletter? Like, those are the problems that they'll have. They'll never have, because the average massage therapist isn't going to try and scale to the degree that I have, and then more so the degree that you have, you know? So, you know, I mean, like, it's never perfect, man. Like, and when it does get perfect, be ready.
Yeah.
The shit's going to break soon.
Yeah.
Just when you have
I'm not a tech worker. I got into massage and body work because I wanted to connect with people.
Yeah, for sure.
Help them. And then even initially, not a lot of people I don't think they really understand this. There was a point I said, I'm running my practice. I'm like, I can't teach online. That's not even possible. That's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What am I going to do? Teach tango online?
Right.
You don't teach martial arts online.
Right.
Are you out of your fucking mind? And then what do I do now? I teach online. Because here's the thing. Let's say it's 70%. I'll just make up a percentage. Can you teach 70% globally?
Right.
Because when you have subscribers in Australia and you're like, wow. But people are giving me success stories. I screenshot them where they're like, they'll just take a free carpal tunnel class I gave away recently.
Yeah.
And then they'll just write me and go, wow, I really like your teaching style. It's very like plain, like matter of fact. And here's what happened. You know, when you talk about, the worst thing about Katrina was the fact that we were completely helpless.
For sure.
I couldn't do anything for people in New Orleans.
Sure.
I love you, everything you've given America and your culture and your food, everything you've given me. But I couldn't do anything because I wasn't going to get in a goddamn boat and paddle down to New Orleans and try to rescue people. Yeah. So what happened when COVID hit is I went, okay, hold on, what do I got? And I'm like, I got a carpal tunnel class. Like, nobody's barely signed up for it. I gave away like 700 copies of that course within a week.
Sure.
When I told it up, because we normally charge $70, that was $49,000 worth of class stuff that I gave away for free. And you go, I mean, it's the least I could do, right? Because it's not like I have to reteach it. I'm just pressing a button to allow them access.
Right.
And like, listen, when I did, our infrastructure died.
Sure. Yeah.
There was all kinds of like software integrations that to this day, like 2 weeks later, I'm still dealing with. But did it help people out? Did it build exposure? Did it let people get to know me? Did it have people want to connect with me, talk with me? Did it foster relationships? It's just like having the podcast. You know, is the podcast we're doing good for you? Or is it good for me?
Right.
It's like, no, it's good for
it's just
both.
good. It's just good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think those are important things. I think they're all important things. And I think that, you know, giving to the community is well, again, I mean, I think you and I have the same thing. It's like, you know, this community, this industry, whether it knows it or not, for two black sheep, has given us both so much. You know, like I can't sit back and watch people struggle. You know, and obviously, I also know I'm pragmatic enough to know that you can't help everybody. But damn, the people that I can help, I want to help, and if I can offer that help, because I'm willing to be a heretic, and I'm willing to not ask permission.
Yep.
You know, I'm good.
The benchmark thing was me going, okay, how about I give you an entire template of everything I do in my practice for free for your first month and for $7 a month thereafter.
For sure.
They're like, that's impossible. And I go, ooh, okay, I'm ahead of the curve. Just keep going. They'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
Just saying, I can't make you use it and apply it. I can't make you dig through it. But the handful of students, the guys who are willing to dig through the Grateful Dead's vault and go, oh my God, listen to this show from '74. Oh my God, look at what they did. You know, this was way ahead of its time or whatever. That's the thing. It's like digital distribution is not delivering body work. It's delivering information.
Yep.
And information in the digital age is like wow. I mean, you know, a mechanic, like anything you want. And I tell students this because sometimes they have questions that are outside of my scope of knowledge. And I go, listen, go to Google or YouTube and say, how do I
X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Dude, I remember there was a weed eater. I'm not real good with like lawn equipment. I had a weed eater and the weed eater hose like dried and dry rotted and cracked.
Yep.
And then I looked up the code on the weed eater for its make and model and said, filter gas something, you know, other, and I'm not lying, there was a perfect schematic.
Yeah.
Showed where the hoses are. I was like, wow.
And a YouTube video to help you change it.
Yeah.
If you're willing to put in the time, you could change it. Or you can just take it to the shop and have somebody else do it. But the information's there available to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you're willing to work with it. And that was the thing. It's like other educators, like, you don't show them everything, do you? Like it's a trade secret.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I have a problem with that.
Right.
Because I don't think any of this is a secret. I'm trying to give it away as fast as I can.
Dude, it's the human. Well, first of all, Samuel, it's the human body. Are we that arrogant enough to believe that, you know, we'll say, you know, 2,000 years, we'll say, right? 2,020 years. If we just take that little time signature, do we really think we're that special that we've created something within the last 2,020 years that stands out? That's an asinine situation, you know? Like nothing for body work, nothing's new under the sun. I mean, like it's been done a bajillion times.
The subscription, Robert, you got to charge more. The staff, the CE, not CE, the independent contractors that I hire, like you gotta charge more. They're always trying to squeeze my audience for more money, and I'm like, no. How about a different question? Instead of how do we make more money, it's like how do we help more people?
Right.
Ask that question with me very deeply.
Yeah.
Because that's where the money comes from.
Right.
Like, I know they don't understand it, but the thing is, I have a connection with my audience. If I lie to them and sell them a bunch of trash, like I might make some short-term profit.
Yeah.
But what does it do to my long-term legitimacy?
Yeah. Well, I just looked at the clock here, my man, and I think we could do this for another 4 hours.
And we will eventually.
And we will, yeah.
Tell the audience where they can find you again.
Yeah, so you can go to Shawn Kitzman on Facebook. You can go to Synergy Movement Therapy Case Studies on Facebook. You can go to Sustainable Coaching Practices on Facebook. I'm on Instagram as Shawn Kitz. You know, if you look up me, you'll see the shiny head. You can't get away from it. And then the two places, I'm not as much on my Instagram page. I do like more personal stuff on my Instagram page now. But also the Pitching Nerd on Instagram. I'm really active on that, and I'll be active on that for, from now until, the end of time, because that's a big passion for me. And then, if they watch this during COVID and they don't watch this after COVID, and they're interested in possibly taking their practice online, they can either reach out to me personally, or reach out to me on any one of those channels, and I'll get them to the appropriate places to where they can, start to have a conversation and get into the free course.
Cool.
Cool.
So guys, again, Robert Gardner with the Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast. If you want to pick up a DVD, workbook, digital copies, that subscription service I talked about is completely free for your first month. You can find that probably here. There's a link. But if you can always write me, find me wherever. Go ahead and subscribe. It's free for your first month. It's kind of a CE subscription service. It's $7 a month thereafter, but you can work with me in an ongoing way. And Shawn, thank you so much for coming on the program, having a really detailed chat with me. I really enjoyed connecting with you.
Man.
And I hope that your stuff continues to grow. Thank you for what you're doing for therapists.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the time, and it's always a good chat, man.
Cool. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Talk soon, buddy.